Welcome everyone to the latest edition of Real Talk, where we put the real in real estate. And we're going to be talking about real things, the evolution of the MLS. So I've got none other than Johnny Moad, Vice Chair of NAR MLS Committee, whoop whoop, representing Metrotex on that national level, Johnny. And Johnny is also our current Secretary Treasurer of Metrotex. Johnny, thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. All right. And Danae Evans, she is the CEO of Council of Multiple Listing Services. Danae, you know what? I think the first question that people are going to have is, what's the Council of the Multiple Listing Services? That sounds very ominous, but that we even have such a thing. And after we actually had our strat planning session today at Metrotex, and that's a conversation that came up with talking about strategies and the evolution of technology. So would you introduce yourself, as the CEO of the Council of Multiple Listing Services and what you guys do on that end?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat about my favorite subject, multiple listing services. So Danae Evans, the CEO of the Council of Multiple Listing Services, or we like to call it CMLS because everyone loves an acronym. Yeah. But we are the national trade organization for MLSs. We have about 227 MLSs from around the country, and we eat, sleep, and drink all things MLS. And so our members would be Metrotex, and the MLS themselves, the MLS staff, and their volunteer leaders, so their board of directors. We work with them by doing trainings, conferences. On Thursday, we have what we call MLS Matters, where they come together from around the country to talk about what's working well, where's their challenges, who has solutions and ideas. And so we do all things MLS and look to support and advance the MLS industry to better serve consumers and brokers and agents.
Fantastic. So, it's no secret that not just the real estate industry, but the technology industry in general is changing at a rapid pace. We just came back from the NAR conference that all three of us were at. And one of the forward-thinking portions of that in a lot of committee meetings is our strat plan even relevant anymore? Because 6 months ago, we weren't even talking about artificial intelligence. And so that's definitely something that has kind of taken a hold. And it doesn't mean it's a stronghold. It just means it's here. It's rapidly integrating in our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives, and the real estate industry as such. And so I think talking about the rapid pace of how the MLS or that landscape is evolving, and more importantly, articulating that value. We're doing it from the Realtor Association side, but we also need to be articulating that value from the multiple listing service side. And that looks really different. So I will say something anecdotal. When I first met Danae, and that's why I knew we had to have her speaking on this, was I saw you at, I think it was winter meetings, and you were giving a presentation on that kind of evolution and what that looked like from the consumer standpoint. And you mentioned Roblox, and immediately went up like this, because I have a 9-year-old daughter who is completely obsessed. And we even have a monthly subscription to Robux, which she gets very excited. That's the currency for Roblox. But the basis of that is creating and coding and developing games and worlds and houses and all of these other things. And so Danae, kind of talk about what that point was that you discussed on Roblox, because that's what really piqued my interest there.
Absolutely. So I have a 13-year-old daughter who also plays Roblox, and I always mess up the name, Roblox, and she yells at me, but and Sims, and just her creating of her world and her thought and her interaction with real estate, and then seeing her how she engages with that, how she engages with her friends, if they're sitting in there and building cities and towns and together. And then she interacts with me and the work side of things, and what does that look like, or being part of a transaction when we bought a house about a year ago, and her just being involved and her expectations of why isn't that working that way, or why is that taking so long, or what's happening here. And because she's just so used to this immediacy of her world and her having information and everything right there. And so when I would well, this takes a little bit of time, or this is we've got to do this or got to do this, she's why, Mom, why?
Yeah.
What is that?
That is a good question. Why does it take this long? Yes.
But I think that her expectations, how she's going to interact with real estate, how she thinks about home, how she thinks about what it looks like. And so I think that really impacts us as an industry and how we prepare for that, how we look at that, how we engage with her or think about what it's going to be like for her whether she's very possibly could be selling real estate because she loves talking about it and she's all in it, or just in her search for what does a house mean to her and what does she potentially want from it. And I think there's some definite change and evolution of what that will be by the time she's buying her first house. And, that comes quickly.
Yeah. I mean, 13 years old, it could be a decade from now, depending on how well she sets herself up and, and you guys as well. But no, I mean, that's something to really look at. And I think that we're now forced to be looking through those lenses, not what the direct consumer today is going to need, but the generations that are coming up behind us and how they're consuming information. And so that's extraordinarily important as we go forward thinking, whether it's strategic planning, whether it's budgeting, whether it's just, again, articulating the value proposition of the technology that we have. So, Johnny, what about from your standpoint? You are Mr. MLS in the North Texas region, whether you want to be branded or not, and you're representing us very well on the national side. But maybe kind of talk about some of the discussions that you guys are having in the evolution of the MLS and what that means, not just from the consumer side, but maybe from the realtor member side.
Sure, Ashley. And, you guys set me up great, Danae. I'm a huge fan. You know that. CMLS, for those who aren't as familiar or may not be in the MLS space, that is a great resource for you to get to know how the MLS works, the ins and outs. And there are some great resources for you, and we will include those in the link on the chat box. But just to kind of tie into what Ashley and Danae have been talking about, as far as the NAR front goes, we're hearing time and time again, Ashley even mentioned MetroTex is in the process of reevaluating their strategic plans, as well are, the majority of the other associations and multiple listing service parent companies, if you will, throughout North America and the world for that matter. And, the huge disruptor right now is, of course, AI. And I know we're going to kind of get into AI a little bit more, but for those who may not be familiar with the impact on AI, you're just hearing, Ashley and them and Danae talking about their kids. They may only be 3 years old, exploring the American dream of what does that home look like to them. But with tools now, you can voice dictate, you can type and describe what your perfect house looks like, and technology will create that for you. And as everyone's dreams evolve, so can your AI technology, and they can change and evolve and keep giving you different options to help you work with your realtor to figure out what works best for you. What we're seeing with the AI and the chat GPT right now, we're seeing enhanced search capabilities, which is pretty significant because these AI powered algorithms can analyze a vast amount of information and just put it at your fingertips, readily available. You're seeing personalized recommendations, things that you may not even be having the conversation with your spouses and loved ones who are buying the home. But as you're searching, the algorithm, the AI is starting to learn what you actually need and what you want and may not be able to articulate to your realtor assisting you. So we're seeing a ton of different systems. And of course, AVMs are a huge part of this that affect our appraisers and our lenders. So there's just so much going on. And I know we're going to dive into this a little bit more, but just to kind of peel back a little bit of the curtain, there's a lot going on in the NAR MLS world at the moment, as we all know. And we are very excited for stuff that is coming. And if you have any specific questions, I encourage you to drop them in the chat box and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
No, Johnny, that's perfect. And I want to give a shout out to Swivel Media and Tanner Hobbs. He is actually the owner and operator of Swivel Media. And Tanner is a close friend of mine, but we constantly have these conversations. And so he's so excited to join Real Talk for the first time live. But this is right up Tanner's space because he talks about that from a, he really calls himself more of a media company than a real estate photographer. And that's what they do, because even from that side, what do our industry partners need to be providing for us to be able to do that? And so obviously we've had Matterport and, 3D tours and things of that nature, which unfortunately don't coincide and connect with our multiple listing service and all of those tools that we have. But I think it goes back to what does the consumer need? And the consumer is a multifold. The consumer as a realtor association, as a realtor, and then obviously the consumer, like you were just talking about, Johnny. What we do know is that buyers are quite indecisive most of the time. They can articulate when they don't like something, but it's hard to articulate when they do like it. So to continuously gravitate towards those type of things, it's actually really exciting. I know, there was a lot of sentiment when we were at DC, which was some of it's fear. The evolution of change is scary, especially when it's something that maybe it's a topic or an area of the industry that doesn't come naturally to you. But if it can make our job more efficient and easier, I mean, that's what gets exciting. And having partners in this space like you, Danae, and CMLS, and of course our national association that's bringing tools and advocacy and education to help us all adopt these things. I think that's the exciting part going into it, and continuing to help the multifacet of the consumer we're looking at. So,
but you know what? Actually, it's an interesting thing, and I'm just going to take off my hat real quick. This is my personal beliefs, not associated with NAR, Texas Metrotex, yada yada yada. But we are seeing some vulnerabilities. So while it's an exciting time, it is a scary time for some local associations. We are very blessed to be here in North Texas. We have Netris, which is a regional operated MLS that is a powerhouse. That's got the best tools. They're on top of the AI. They are, we're very lucky in that front. But, it's very unfortunate to see a lot of other smaller associations that don't have necessarily the banking behind them to be able to stay on top of technology. As Danae will tell you, technology is incredibly expensive and it's rapidly evolving to the point where it's becoming, you're seeing multiple state mergers, you're seeing regional mergers just to be able to stay in the game, just because it's so expensive to compete and provide the basic tools that we as practitioners expect.
Danae, I'll punt to you. I think that's a great segue into how do you guys sit there and support all of your MLS members and everything else, and what are you guys seeing on that end to create that infrastructure for them?
Well, I think I'll tag on to where Johnny just finished the words of expectations. Like, what is the consumer expectation? And I feel like that's something our industry is really embracing right now, is to really pay attention to that. How are we as the MLS, as well as the broker and the agent, working together to understand those needs and meet those needs? And I say, if as an MLS, you're waiting until someone asks you for a need, if there's, Ashley, you've got this great idea and you want to be able to do it, but you ask, and then the MLS has to start going at that point, we've already missed the curve. We have to be ahead of it and understanding where are those trends coming at a national level, and what are those expectations, by paying attention to what my 13 or my 19-year-old is doing as she is out in the world, and how are they interacting with technology. And you mentioned the videos and all the tools, the Matterport, that type of stuff. Like, the way my girls interact with technology and information is video. Like, it's in front of them. It's not like data on a piece of paper in a 2D. It's very immersive. And so I think it's really important that we are considering, as the practitioners, as the MLS, that the world how do we get them to, how does the consumer engage with housing in this very 3D way? So whether it's the photos, whether it's the floor plans, whether it's the videos, all of those types of things, that's really that future place. And so taking those comments and saying, how do we support MLSs? I think one of the great things is that we bring the MLSs together from around the country, so you can hear, Johnny can hear what's happening out in Boston, or what's happening in California or Seattle, to understand what is somebody else already solving, providing challenges, and talking about how can we better support the people in your market by understanding. I say photo scraping, which normally is a really bad word. But it's photo scraping is the future of, it's taking the photos you're uploading and it's taking the data out of it, rather than as the agent having to input all that stuff. There's MLSs scraping that stuff from the photos that you upload. And obviously, as the professional, you need to look over that information and make sure it's correct and accurate.
Yep.
But how much time do you save to really go share your expertise with your consumer, your customer, And so again, it's just us evolving, embracing that change as to what's coming and how do we leverage it to better serve the consumer in the marketplace.
Well, here's what I will tell you right now. If you can remove friction from my life, because I am a constant overthinker. So I'm great at data entry and everything else. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go. You get to that property description and I'm like, writer's block. You know, it's like, where do you even start? And so we've talked about this. It doesn't replace us, just like iBuyers did not replace our value proposition in the marketplace. That's been proven. Don't demonize the technology. Just kind of figure out what friction is this removing from the experience. And so if you're using artificial intelligence or photo scraping, it's removing friction from me because you're giving me a starting point, and then I can go in there and I can, sit there and do the cross check, make sure that everything's in compliance, make sure that all the data was extrapolated correctly from the photos and everything else. And so I think that's super exciting because my value proposition goes way beyond writing an articulate property description that has the word boast and bequeath and coveted, and all those things that make my eyes start popping. It'd be great for somebody else to be able to help me with that portion of the process. So again, this isn't to have anybody on this stream right now feel like they're going to be replaced. You are so much more than inputting a property description. So go ahead.
I think you touched on one thing, is just what is the value of not only the MLS, it's what is the value of the realtor, of the professional in this and I think there's a lot of people questioning that more than ever, but I think the value is more than ever, right? Like what you provide, and in partnership with the MLS, by having access to the most comprehensive data set that's accurate, timely, and comprehensive. But part of the ask, or what we're doing at CMLS, and I know NAR is doing it as well, is to articulate the value. Why is it important for the consumer? What benefit do you bring? And so we completed a campaign, and there's a website called In the Know, that if you are using the multiple listing service and you're using your professional to help you do that, then you have the most accurate information, the most available properties to the most available people. And so I would encourage all of you, whether it's, I think, Johnny, you could share some of the other resources NAR has, but CMLS has one, that it's so important right now. I think that's something that I would ask everyone on the call. If you one action item to leave is to really work to articulate your value as either the buyer's agent, the selling agent, whatever it is. What is the professional bring to it? How is working with your MLS beneficial to them? Getting your home on the market so you can get what the market price is. But I think articulating our value as an industry and what we provide to the consumer in the way of making good choices. How do you know what the value of a home is? Well, because you have comps and you understand what's going and what's listed and what's sold and all of that. And that doesn't exist outside North America. And I think a lot of times we kind of miss that part. And so I think there's a lot of great things to say, and we need to be saying them right now for sure. So I know we've got the CMLS resources, and Johnny, I know NAR has some great ones that have been putting out, and flyers and videos.
I'd be remiss if I didn't push competition.realtor to everybody on the screen. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, but it is truly a great resource. We'll, again, share that information with you. But just to, kind of piggyback on to what Ashley and Danae were saying, at the end of the day, it's important to note that while AI and like ChatGPT and all these amazing programs are out there, they're bringing significant benefits to us, but they're purely just tools. They are not replacement, because at the end of the day, they cannot replace the expertise and the personalized service that we as realtors bring. So no matter what you hear, people just like to engage and stir the pot. But again, even when you turn on your AIs and your ChatGPTs, they'll put the disclaimer in the first sentence. I'm not a realtor. I can't tell you realtor information, but here's my opinion. Consult with your realtor. And so, at the end of the day, with anything MLS related, these are just tools to better enhance our experience as practitioners and better serve our customers, the homeowners at large.
Here's a great example. Again, know, like, and trust. That's my motto and everything else. And it makes my job a lot easier, especially working by referral. And when somebody that has worked with me knows how to refer me appropriately and what my skill set is to the process in general, that's huge. But then you turn around and you go, okay, I mean, that's what we're hearing right now. Well, why do I need you when I've got AVMs and we can go online and see pictures and 3D tours and all of these other things? Not everybody possesses the skill set of spatial differences and what something's going to feel like and how big something is in person and relation, to busy streets and different things that are important and not important to them. And so I've got a couple who've worked with twice now, and they're relocating to Auburn, Alabama, and worked with a very nice realtor that was referred. They're originally from there. And the realtor was great, but I knew how they ticked. I knew the things that were pain points for them. I understood what was important to their family. And so even though they had a good realtor in that local marketplace, every time they turned around, even in their 2-day looking for houses, they talked to me for 2 and 3 hours, over that weekend, because it was like, okay, Ashley, here's what we're seeing. Can you look up these listings and put it through the filter of what our family needs? Because you know what our needs are working with us. And so we went through that whole process, and I was able to gut check them. And I'm like, go to these and then come back to this one. And when it was all said and done, they were able to make a qualified decision and go forward with purchasing a home. Fast forward, they were having a little friction right before closing. And multiple times I was having to sit there and go, okay, let me talk to you. And let's pull up the things, the pain points that are going on right now. And they're like, our realtor's been fantastic, but you were literally able to have a counseling session, and the wife's actually a counselor. So she was laughing. She was like, well, if real estate doesn't work out for you, you could come into the counseling profession.
I mean, you're nailing it, Ashley, though. Think about it. I mean, we're punching bags in our industry. That's just part of what it is. Counselors, therapists, all the things.
Sure.
Can you imagine when they're calling their AI, asking them to press 1 if you're mad about the listings presented, or 2 if they can't get in the times they want, or they got outbid on a home, and why? I mean, people, it will never happen.
Well, and I think it goes back to, and by the way, I mean, yesterday morning they were supposed to close, and I had to have an hour-long conversation about what are the barriers, what are the friction, where are we at? Let's talk about worst case scenario, best case scenario, and ultimately at the end of the day, no matter what decision you make, you better be happy that your family is in that house in this next chapter going from North Texas to Alabama. So if you're bitter, don't move forward. If you think your family's going to be happy here and you're just disappointed with how the process ended, then fantastic. And you know what? I called them last night and they said, congratulations, we are now homeowners in Auburn, Alabama. And we credit that truly, obviously, to you. I wasn't even there. I didn't even look at the houses. I didn't do any of that. But my value proposition went so far beyond being you're not resigned to being a showing agent. You're not the person that's doing all of those other things. And so I think really the biggest thing from the MLS side and the association side, looking at realtors, is what's our new value proposition? And I think we have to retool that. Danae, we haven't been the only keeper of the data for how long now? I mean, that was our original, but that's been how long?
CMLS has been around since 1957. I think I should know the year MLS started, so don't tell anyone I don't right now. I feel like I'm failing the pop quiz.
Well, no, but I mean, in
forever.
Today's defense, there's different variations of when it started, so it depends on who you ask. But neither here nor there, it all kind of boils back to how is that MLS data harnessed? And so since the beginning of time, that's what it was always about. It was who kept it? Where was it accessible from? How did they distribute it? And, we go from, you always see the old archives with note cards, and, there's still people around practicing, right? That still had the note cards, and that's evolution, right? And then you got the books, and then you got the old Palm Pilots, and then you got all the other good stuff. So, I mean, I think it's really interesting to see how we've evolved, but more importantly, how agents are harnessing MLS information, and those who know how to work the system, meaning your actual MLS system, and fully utilize all of the functionality, those are your top producers. Those are the ones making the real money.
So I have to shout out to Palm Pilot, because My mother was so proud of herself when she got into the business, and she was one of the first ones. She's like, screw it, don't know what I'm doing, but I need to get the Palm Pilot, because that's the evolution of sitting there and being technologically advanced. And she's also the one that's saying that we need to hire her 9-year-old granddaughter, my child. We're a family of multi-generation realtors. She said so. But she still talks about that. You can make fun of me all day long, but I was the first one in the office to have a Palm Pilot way back when. But it was seeing the need and kind of diving into it. So good job, Sherry, on the Palm Pilot.
And I would just add on that, Ashley, like, it's embracing that. It's about exciting opportunities to how to make your job more efficient, where you get to spend the time really in those relationships. So let's think about technology of taking away from any of your value. It's just augmenting and adding to it.
Yep.
And so having that mindset, embracing it. But I think we're at this key point, and I love that you, Johnny, you're bringing up the note cards, the book, the Palm Pilot. They've all gone away. Right? They were the new cool thing that really helped you do your business better at the time. But it always has to change. It has to evolve. And I think that's one of the feedback I do hear around the country is realtors may not particularly like when you change anything with their MLS system. but like, it has to happen, right? We have to evolve. We have to change. We have to not be Palm Pilot, and we have to not be Blockbuster or MLS Books. And one of my favorites, though, was hearing an MLS executive talk about their boardroom discussions when they were changing from the book, going to the World Wide Web and the internet, like, that was so traumatic. And oh my gosh, it's the world is ending, but that's just part of the change. So that would be sort of my ask, is embrace the change that helps you do your job better and better serve the consumer. But that change that is the only constant, is change. Right.
And for those joining us in tonight who are playing the drinking game that we all love to play, the word of the night is change. So everybody, grab your drink. It's time.
We've got it. Yes. And all right. Sherry brought up a good point. We are no longer driving with a maps go on our steering wheel. So there's also some safety mechanisms that have come into play and how we operate. I don't care who you are. That's how I got my start in the real estate industry, was sitting there, and I was basically the co-pilot and like looking at the MapsGo book for my mother, because there was no MapQuest or Waze or Google Maps or anything else. And look at where we are today, which is safer, more efficient, and it allows us to serve our clientele so much better. But I think that's the biggest thing is that change is scary, and there's going to be constant change. Going from an MLS book, which I started when we still had MLS books, to going to it being online, that was a huge change. The ones we're talking about now, they're not as big. We just kind of have to get out of our own way to allow them to happen and adapt and evolve with them.
And it's so much easier. It's one of these things. Today, you've been spared our regional drama about our mapped area. We used to call them MLS areas. And so it was just a pre-mapped area on a map that made no sense, rhyme or reason. The company had gone out of business, I believe, back in the early 90s, but it was still a form that every practicing agent used it to default to searches. But you ask yourself now, why in the world would I have done that when it would have taken me 5 seconds to draw exactly where I wanted on a map for my specific client looking in the particular area and get the best results? And, kind of tying it back to what we talked about earlier, it goes back, how do you harness the information in the MLS? Are you trying to take the easy way and just default searches? Or are you really harnessing the power of the MLS to get the right information the first time and the best fit, if you will?
Well, what just came to mind, one is muscle memory. The other is intuitive thinking. And I think we always rely on muscle memory. I can do that in my sleep. That's easy. Don't throw something else to me that I'm going to have to do. I already juggle 92 spinning plates, but that's lazy. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I do it too. I'm like, no, don't change things on me. I don't want to do another iOS update. I just learned how to function my phone as it stands. But it's fixing bugs. It's increasing the user experience. It's doing all of these other things because there are people much smarter than I that are sitting there in the background trying to fix that and create a better user experience. And I think that's what we're doing now. So if I challenge all our realtors and our people that are watching right now to sit there and gut check yourself. Are you upset about change because you know how to do it and muscle memory and you don't have to think about it? Or is it because you don't think it's effective in increasing the value proposition or marketplace? And I think we can all put those kind of decisions through that filter and that mechanism. So, okay, going to something else, which I think is very prudent when we're talking about the end user consumer experience. What are the two largest, and I'll put it out to the people watching or to you guys as well. There's two that are kind of neck and neck and trading off as far as groups, that are the largest buyer pools right now when we're talking about generations, and they've kind of changed in a little bit. So if anybody wants to put out what the number one and number two generations are, put it in the chat. And I don't have any prizes, but you'll at least get street cred. But what about you guys? Johnny, who do you?
We'll get you some Metrotech swag.
There you go.
I'll give Johnny, a high five.
Yeah, high five. Johnny, what do you think? Who do you think is the number one buyer generator, client generation right now?
It's interesting because I know the statistics, but I actually disagree with the statistics. Millennials are, they're creeping up, and they're the ones starting to buy stuff, and they've been sitting on the stockpile of cash forever. And it's so funny. Everyone says American dream, home ownership. That's how it goes. But you know what? It's sometimes leasing is a beautiful thing. And I'm seeing that more and more with my younger clients. But now they're set up to buy the home that they wanted. They're kind of skipping a couple steps and going into the bigger home, instead of starting with a starter home and progressing. And, we're seeing a lot more generational setups where people are all living in the same home for extended periods of time.
Yep. So, all right, Swivel Media, millennials, that is number two. So, Danae, do you have a guess what number one is?
Is boomers number one?
Boomers are number one.
But millennials are creeping up. I'm telling you.
Millennials were kind of the top dog there for a second. But what's happening is obviously, the last 3 years, our world kind of went through some transitional changes and housing needs changed and what people wanted. Utility, as we're talking about
interest rates scare the bejeebers out of millennials. It's just the weirdest thing. You say a rate, they don't even know if it's a good rate or a bad rate. Freaks them out.
Those boomers are.
I understand. I'm in that category, but it's the craziest thing. Rates freaks them out.
It's just like the same thing. Boomers are desensitized because when they bought their first house, they were double digit. So it's very different. But here's the biggest thing: those are two different consumer bases, two different needs. And if you sit there and you lump every consumer in the same category, you're doing a disservice. iBuyers was the big disruption, right? In the last probably like 8 years into our industry, was adding this instant buyer platform. And everybody always thought it was the millennials. Oh, the millennials are ruining everything. They just want to streamline and do it with technology and get away with the realtor. But it was actually the elder population was the one that utilized those iBuyer services more so because they were tired of having friction in their lives. They had gone through the process multiple times, and time and energy was also something that they quantified in dollar value, where millennials didn't necessarily know any better. And so again, we were pushing what we thought was the generation that was driving the technological advances and the home buying services, but it was really the older population. And that was our problem. That was our problem for sitting there and making that assumption. And that's what I always said was, okay, then why does that population go to the iBuyer and leave money on the table? Because they don't want friction. So remove the friction in the process as
it's hilarious. So like Danae and I have laughed about this before, off stage and stuff. What's the user experience? You have all these beautiful platforms and tools, but what could be the best user experience for one set of group, it could be the worst experience for the other. I just did a deal, with people who had a harder time utilizing the platform DocuSign. Most people who use DocuSign, like, how can you mess that up? It's like you click 2 buttons and it's like, it can't mess it up.
I can mess it up still.
My clients can mess it up. I can vouch for that. But, you give them a different platform, and it was the best experience. They loved it, and they were raving about how easy it was for them. So,
Yeah.
we're going 100 miles an hour in this MLS lane, but sometimes we got to take a beat and realize, okay, what's the best for our consumer? And not all MLS platforms.
And I think, though, if there's silver linings from COVID, I think because there was the generational experiences of how to interact with technology. COVID coming in, everyone just had to just embrace it because that's how we had to operate in order to keep moving forward, right? There was so much technology. I didn't even understand e-signatures were not legal in like however many states.
Yep.
And so then this big movement to say, yes, we can do electronic signatures like at the national level. That never settled in with me that was an issue. But
mobile notaries.
Right. Like there was just so many pieces to that. I think COVID really pushed us on this technology road that people were quick to adapt. It maybe would have taken 3 to 5 years, if not more. Like we just got done in 12 months because we had to, as just like everyone had to. So I think that's one part of it, but I don't think that technology ramp up has slowed down much, right? Like it's just still that we've got to keep going at that pace. And what is that expectation from there? It moved us forward. So I think there's a lot to that experience part that you're talking about.
Yep.
But I also, the experience is what they expect, like setting the expectations. And I will add on there, I think a lot of times our industry gets a bad rap for where those pain points are and all the stuff that you talk about. But I think I did 10 years in mortgage lending. So I hope I'm not offending anyone to say that I think a majority of those pain points come from the lending side of things. If you have an all cash deal, it's a little less painful. Yes. But that's not as common. So, one, again, I just think it's articulating that value, but the technology, embrace that technology to increase your value, right? Like, how do you continue to build on that? And whether it's the boomer who's experiencing, and like you said, the iBuyers, they've been through a house buying and selling a house before. They understand that. So yes, that convenience might have been worth that additional amount. Whereas a millennial first time doesn't really understand what they would or wouldn't be missing by going through not the iBuyer. So
absolutely. And again, it's projecting what we think on everybody else. And you would see people marketing, well, if you'd used a realtor versus using a buyer, you would have netted this much more money. Well, that's only putting it in a dollar value.
Well, and that's also, I guarantee anyone on this platform, bring me a contract, show me your bottom line, and I can show you how you got played if you use one of those programs. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not getting the full picture. They're not necessarily a bad deal for simplicity, as Ashley had mentioned earlier, but consumers.
But what I'm saying is, on that, as realtors, we automatically go to, well, I could have made you more money. It's not always about money. You have to understand that there's a need for removing friction from a process. So if we marketed it as, we understand that this is a process that has a lot of friction. And then in the daily life where everybody's extraordinarily more leveraged than they were 20 and 30 years ago, again, because of technology and other things, then we needed to articulate, not only could you get more money, but I too can help remove the friction from the process. I think it's just kind of putting a different hat on and looking at what was the driving factor. I do want to make one comment, because this is real talk and we don't stray away from real comments. And Peggy Johnson made a comment about, that areas were an important part of her utility and her business. And look, that's not taking away that those areas weren't put into place at one given time to create efficiency and segment different areas and communities from a standpoint of geography. What we did see was the fact that we could not update those. And as rural areas and different areas of our geographical competency and what we service changed, we could no longer change those areas and those boundaries. And that was a disservice. And then something obviously that came out, and we discussed this at NAR. What was the thing that came out now? And it's not necessarily bureaucratic. It's something that we have to really look at, Johnny, though. What's a comment on that in regards to areas?
So I will not speak in regards to NAR's position on any of those matters, but tying it back to the feedback that just came in the box, one of the important factors that, we need all practitioners to think about, we know you have your consumer's best interest.
Yes.
However, you have to be hypersensitive to the fact that if there's ever a perception that you may be redlining intentionally or not, that cannot be allowed. Our industry is too strong to allow that type of behavior to happen. And while I know a lot of our agents would never do that, redlining is a serious issue, and it's an issue that's been around since the beginning of time, and it continues to this day. So if you're doing arbitrary areas, you have to ask yourself, are you unintentionally creating a red line situation? And I think that's something that we all as practitioners talk about all the time. As our MLS grows and as technology improves, how do we get away from anything that could be misconstrued like that?
Well, and we saw that, the Long Island Divide. And I actually met the current president of the Long Island Association of Realtors, and he's fantastic. And he was telling me about when we were in DC, all the strides they've made over the past 5 years, and what they've done. And it's awesome. But what we learned from that was, I don't want to go on a soapbox on all of those things. We just have to be hyper vigilant and protect ourselves, because we do have an industry that definitely has a microscope on it. So if there's anything that we can do to be risk managers, and reduce liability on certain things, that is a positive. And those are things that we can again embrace and change. And there's other things that we can do to still make sure that we can be agile and function within our search capabilities. But it was a multi-prong effect, and still it's something that whether it's from a technology usage or from a liability and protection side, that's where we're at, and we're going forward.
When it goes back to you being able to utilize the platform itself, right? So if you have somebody that may have accidentally incorrectly mapped a property, or may have tried to put it in an area that it's next to, but technically is not, the problem that we were seeing on the national side is that, okay, so you're running a search and you probably have an auto search going to your clients. What if that particular property was not generating in those results, and as a result of the not properly using the technology, your client lost that opportunity?
Yep.
Are you liable? Did you make a mistake? Do they know you made a mistake? I mean, that goes back to the MLS and kind of why we're here and how important it is, and to be able to know it, understand it, and be comfortable with it. That's, it's about being a practitioner.
All right,
I would
Danae.
say it's one, I would just encourage, if anyone hasn't, to read The Color of Law, which is a great book about the history of real estate, and very eye-opening. The second part is it's about the tools of the future. And so, Johnny, as I heard, and I think this is, I would say most of my MLSs across the country, I've been hearing this conversation, has a lot to do with maps and stuff that were maybe created from a while ago when the technology didn't support how to be able to maybe search as effectively as we can today.
Yep.
I think I'm hearing that quite a bit across the country, giving the new ways to search for things based on the client wants and needs, because maybe they're there and they don't meet today. But I will also end with saying that I think one of the greatest things about the multiple listing service, the MLS, is the biggest advocate for fair housing that we have, because it does make the most amount of properties available to the most amount of people. And even making sure that the professionals, the realtor, has all of the inventory is when it's on the MLS, and you can take it to your clients. So I'll leave it there.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I think going into, you kind of segued into, people have different needs and utilities in their homes than they did 5, even 3, 10 years ago. And so our multiple listing service, being able to kind of drill down and be a little bit more sophisticated in search parameters and other things than other online search engines, I think is a great tool to understand that buyers' needs have changed. I mean, we're working in our homes, we're schooling in our homes, we're working out in our homes, we're aging in and staying in our homes longer. And so I think that's something that we talked about in the pre-show. Was before it was like, all right, this is my entry level home, like you were talking about, Johnny. I think on TLC,
Do and done. In and
yes.
out.
Yeah, no, they used to have it where it was like the level up show, and you would see the different generations of home buyers looking at that. That's changed dramatically. Before it might have been, this is my entry level home. I'm gonna be here 3 to 5 years. Well, now your entry level home might actually be 7 to 10 years, or your entry level home is no longer what we would consider entry level, like you were talking about, Johnny. You have people that decided to rent for a longer period of time to amass a larger down payment and be able to kind of skip the entry level portion and go to the mid tier. And so that's also something that we're looking at. And if we just go back to the ways of which we've always searched for real estate for our clients and everything else, again, it goes to being a disservice. Danae, you mentioned the Pinterest era of search styles. So kind of expand on that just a little bit, because I loved that concept.
Yeah, I actually heard that from a CEO of one of the portals probably seven years ago. So early when I started this position, is saying the triage of home search. And so where that technology is growing, and I think you guys talked earlier and saying that buyer doesn't exactly always know what they do want, but they can tell you what they don't want. And so if you think of the idea of Pinterest in search, once you select something on there, it starts matching more and more of like, what am I looking for? I'm like, my current house looking to do a remodel for mid-century modern. And so I've started updating that from the last project that we did, and it's matching it so that I'm really starting to hone in and see what it is. And I think that has huge potential for our industry, and specifically for the professional and your relationship with the client, to narrow down and kind of do that translation to helping find that house of really what it is I'm looking for, but I can't quite articulate other than what I know I don't want. But I think that's where the photos come in so important to the future of the MLS and how we best support the realtor and their relationship with the consumer. Is that's more efficiency. If you can narrow that down quicker and sooner, and because really your job, you find the house and you get it under contract, but then the real thing is you got to get it to close.
Yep.
And that skill set is huge. And that's really like the meaningful part, is if you don't get to that closing table, as you talked about, talking through that. So how can the MLS and the data and the information that's in there better equip you for those efficiencies and making that match? But the Pinterest, if you just think of a Pinterest and they were able to select one house and then start matching what in the area is similar, of open concept or walking to a park, or all those things that are a little bit challenging to search for today. But I think as an industry, we're evolving to that. And that's the search of the future, is not data points like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,900 square feet. And it's this open concept, and it's close to the school and my commute, if you have one, or my commute to the kitchen table, if I work from home. Just that the way they think about interacting as a consumer, I think we're referring back to our daughters, of how are they living in the house, and how do you connect that search piece to it, the look and feel of search, not necessarily the data points, but the data points turned into really connecting that's the house you want to live in and how you're going to live in it.
It's like data points are the gateway to the final element. One of the things, and I know, Danae, you've spoken on this before, and Ashley, you've been on panels too. One thing that we always we're going so fast we don't really talk about as much is the ADA part of things, and how important that these data points and all of the descriptors and the meta information that is all pulled from MLS, how that can help people that have disabilities and have, we take for granted to go log online and scroll through 1,000 photos. There's some people that can't do that. And that's why the MLS serves a myriad of functionalities. But that's one of the unrepresented markets that we don't talk enough about. And this is really helping them as well as we continue into this AI realm of MLS.
Well, and those are the things that I always look at, especially with encouraging, training, coaching new agents and talking about that. The property description is not there to re-articulate what's already been in the data points. That property description is to tell me a story about a house that I wouldn't naturally see by reading a list of rooms and 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, all of these other things. Tell me what I'm missing, because the way we're disseminating that data, we are missing a lot of information. And so I even tell my clients when I have to set up auto searches and everything else, and our one home experience is also continuing to increase, which is great, because I don't want it to be the fire hydrant effect to my clients, but I do have to make filters so loose nowadays because people aren't searching in the same capability that they were. Hey, I need a 4-2, but I really only need a 4-bedroom because I want an office space, but I'd be fine with a 3-bedroom plus an office or 4 traditional bedrooms. Fantastic. So I'm going to make this real big and real loose because we don't have that functionality right now to sit there and kind of put those different pinpoints in. So instead, I'm the filter. I'm the mechanism in which I can research and look at all of those things. But if there was a way to use, increased technology, artificial intelligence to take and extrapolate that data, that would be so helpful to me. But right now, that's what we're having to do, is be the interpreter of the data. When right now we actually have technology that's becoming immersive in our industry that can aid us in doing it, instead of going through, like you were saying, 1,000 different photos and descriptions and everything else to see if this could be filtered into what my client truly wants at the end of the day.
Well, I think you bring up a great point of like the data points that are currently exist today and what are those needs, because is it home office versus 4th bedroom, and how do you put that in there different? You think about Wi-Fi coverage or internet access.
Yep.
I think today I work from home. So if it doesn't have good coverage, cell coverage or Wi-Fi, I need to know, does it get like the fiber optic? And so it's evolving that, but that takes the feedback of the professional, as the realtor telling the MLS, here's where I need that. Here's what my consumers are asking for. And so that'd be another ask or feedback I'd have today for those listening in is seeing that as a really positive relationship with your MLS, is giving that feedback. How is it working for you? What are your consumers asking for, so that we can have that really good feedback loop and continue to build and evolve the MLS to meet it seems simple, but the house I just moved out of from 10 years has the worst cell phone coverage ever. Makes me crazy. But, that would be good information going into it. And it doesn't exist today, but that doesn't mean we don't need to figure out how we can make that happen going forward.
Yeah. And going in, we've got 8 minutes left, and that's what happens on Real Talk. It goes real fast. And I know this was this maybe not the most interactive topic for our viewership, but hopefully people were really, starting to think in a different format. And what this all comes down to for the last few minutes is we have to be thinking about what is the true value proposition of the MLS and the value proposition as a realtor. And we might have to change what that looks like. And not because that doesn't mean we haven't been doing a great job from the MLS side or the realtor side, but the rate in which things are progressing and changing. My child at 9 years old, and actually at 6 years old, had a supercomputer, and she could have an iPad and an iPhone. And yes, you can judge me, and that is absolutely fine. But she had 3 screens going on at once. And
you had her working.
Yeah, well, 3 different, she's on the payroll, 3 different accounts. And she would sit there and stitch things together through those 3 screens and those accounts and create the worlds and stitch those worlds together. And it was so amazing to watch how her processor worked. And so we've got these newer generations that are coming in, so we can demonize the rate in which things are changing, or we can see how exciting that is. But again, I look at her brain as kind of, it's not artificial intelligence, but the more you feed AI, the more it gets correct and the more it is able to feed itself and to give you more constructive data and do what you need to do. And it's the same thing for this newer generation that's coming in, is the fact that, guys, this is how they're being trained. I was lucky enough to have a computer in 6th grade, and that was very different from the generation before me. But what does that look like, and what does that look like in the future? And I think we just need to be constantly looking through different vantage points. Don't demonize, embrace the change, and see how we can be a part of constructive conversation in implementing it.
And I wouldn't even say embrace the change, it's leverage it, right? Like,
Yes.
how does it make you the super stag is the comment in there by superstar?
Oh, yes.
Hilarious.
Yes.
But you're leveraging it to make you the superstar to your consumers, and that you're able to create more efficiencies. But I think the really looking at your MLS as your partner, giving that feedback. What is it that you're needing? What are you seeing? And same with my daughter, Ashley. She's got her iPad, her laptop, and her phone. And she's got the phone, she's on with her friends, and they're talking and they're building a thing and she's watching. I'm like, you're stressing me out just watching it. But like, that's how they operate today. And they expect
auditory
it,
overload. Yes.
right? I'd be having a panic attack or something of like, turn something off.
But that's what they do. And of course, what Francie is talking about is that I was able to give some commentary on an article that came out about affordability, home affordability in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And if you're looking just at data points, it was showing that DFW has kind of creeped into this unaffordable marketplace just by data. And what I was able to do on the newscast, and thank you, Francie, for the shout out. I appreciate it. But it was taking the data that this article came in, and instead of saying we're unaffordable and that Seattle, Washington, D.C., and areas of California are now more affordable, what I was able to do is sit there and turn around. Our actual products are still much more affordable, but we have other issues in our marketplace, talking about catastrophic losses in the insurance industry because of weather-related situations, as well as the increase in our property values and our taxes, because we do have high property taxes because we don't have state income tax and other types of taxes to offset. That those are things that are taking away from the affordability, but that we have state legislation. We're currently in session right now and trying to figure out how to get some long-term property tax relief, how to get some insurance relief on those premiums. Our products are still affordable. It's the insurance and the taxes are kind of pricing us into that position. But we're also, the net migration for people around the country is number 2 behind Florida. And I also said, maybe we'll be number 1 at some point, but we've got a demand factor here. So just looking at data points was actually an incorrect way in extrapolating that data and saying that DFW is unaffordable. It's not unaffordable. Let's take the data and then let's kind of look at it in a different way. So again, going back to the MLS and different things, we have data points, but then we have the interpretation of the data, and that's where we come in as the real estate industry and the realtor professionals. So we've got 3 minutes left. Johnny, I'm going to go to you first. What is your footnote of what we can be thinking about, talking about, or doing to help us be more agile going forward in MLS and technology?
Great question. So I think, the big takeaway here is get excited. There's a lot of stuff coming on the horizon, particularly for MLS. So get excited, get on board. You're not going to mess anything up. You can't break it. So just don't be afraid of it. Have fun with it. Explore it. You'll learn it, just like everything, we'll just try, and you'll nail it. So that's exciting. One other last takeaway I just want to leave everybody with is, if you have ideas, suggestions, or you have like a vision or some great technology idea, let your local association know, because without the ideas and the feedback and the comments from subscribers, we don't know how to enhance our products to bring them to you. So, don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't be afraid to shoot us an idea, a comment, or a suggestion. We'll be able to get to the right place for you. And I think that's the takeaway for me.
That's huge right there. And we were in our MLS board meeting yesterday discussing how we want to be at the forefront of the implementation and the ideas and the technology. We don't want those ideas happening and then we be informed that they're being implemented. And I'm going to brag on MetroTex as well as our MLS director, Kathy Faulkner. That was the comments. We've implemented some new technology that's a member benefit that's not necessarily been the rollout that everybody has wanted. But the overarching feedback was, Kathy, when we emailed you and said we had an issue, you escalated it. It was fixed within minutes or hours or anything else like that. So if we don't know a problem exists, or an opportunity exists, you can't expect us to read your minds. So we're very fortunate that we have amazing staff support from every level, and we do want to hear from you. So reach out to myself or Johnny at any time if you have something that you want to pick our brains about, or if you want to disseminate some ideas to our way. So Danae, same thing to you. Footnote that we can take away from this evening that we can be chewing on, thinking about in regards to technology and the MLS going forward.
Change is the only constant. So looking at that and embracing and leveraging it to help you better serve your consumers. And I think, Johnny and Ashley, that was a great finish up of just see your MLS as the partner, give that feedback, provide it not as like it's a problem, it's causing something, but how do we keep working on that to make it better? Because I know your MLS is working hard to meet those future needs. And like you said, be ahead and be leading, be building the new things. That's what you have to do to stay relevant to your consumers. Yes. And so look at that as the partnership, and to be involved, you don't just have to be on the board of directors, just to have that feedback loop and be willing to share and talk and find those opportunities. I think is a great word, is super key to us continuing to meet the needs of the consumer and creating a very robust marketplace for finding your homes, selling your homes.
Fantastic. Well, Johnny and Danae, thank you both for being our humble guests tonight. And you guys were both fantastic, bringing your expertise into there. And again, guys, this is not always to bore you and be a forum or an education platform, but be a real interactive talking point. And the MLS is at the forefront right now of increased technology and user capability. And we want to hear from you, and we want to understand what this next generation is looking for. So yes, great job, guys. Thank you. And we look forward to hearing more in the future. So with that, have a fantastic evening and another drink, because we said change about 3 times in that last little bit.
Catch up. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Ashley.
All right. We'll see you soon.